Regal Racing Sulkies, the sulky for the serious contender. Regal will get you there faster, like Roliella's record time trial of 1:52 and 6 at Albion Park in 1988.
The vet's got the whip out. He's urging his 3-year-old on. The prompter chasing him. Roliella in front. There's all sorts of records in front of him. Roliella holding the prompter, who still can't catch him. They hit the line. 1:52.6.
Use Regal Sulkies for the winning edge. Call 02 707 3411. 02 707 3411. Regal Sulkies, the winning edge. R.J. Walsh & Son, manufacturers of Regal Racing Sulkies, proudly present Masters of the Sulky.
All right, Brian Hancock sills him away now. He leads by 15 metres. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen. He's a mighty horse. Thorite comes down to the line to win by about 16 metres.
200 to run, and Rivoli Jack flattens out in front of another Bart. It's just Michael and Rufus Youngblood. Thorite can't get out. Rivoli Jack in front. Her station diving up on the rail. Then it's just Michael, but it's Jack. It's Rivoli Jack in front, and Rivoli Jack leads from go to woe.
Thorite springs to him in a twinkling, and Thorite dashes to the lead. Oh, the Tasmanian is brilliant. He's won now 3 in succession. Thorite, he comes away from tirelessly. That fade kick. Luxury Liners coming in the outside. Then Ceramic, 4-8, Kylie Zero. Sinbad Bay in front. Luxury Liner can't get in. Kylie Zero flashes home, but Sinbad for the gold gap. Sinbad Bay injured 3 metres.
Brian Gath, the master Victorian rangeman, and Brian Hancock, the accomplished Sydney trainer, combine to share their recipe to success in harness racing in Masters of the Sulky. Gath is widely known as Australia's greatest driver, although a top trainer in his own right. Gath has won almost every feature race in the country as a freelance driver. Among his imposing list of feature wins include many on some of our most famous horses, like Markovina, Sinbad Bay, All Meter Boy, Rivoli Jack, Caramia Duplicity, Al's Holiday, Affleur, Lena Vale Lad, The Yank, Truant Armour, King Frost, Arunga Hanover, Sammy Caramia, Master Kane, and Maria Vassallo, plus many more victories with colts and fillies, pacers and trotters, young and old. For big stables and small, Brian Gath, undoubtedly a master of the sulky. Like Gath, Brian Hancock has developed somewhat of a cult following, being widely regarded as the trainer's trainer. Hancock believes in putting his horse first, and the results have stood the test of time. Hancock has driven many winners, but it's as a conditioner of horses where he has no peers. The feature wins innumerable, with horses such as Thorate, Teeny Rena, We Own a Chief, Bundanoon, Will Adios, Our Stretto, Great Ambition, For Penny Dark, Jick Adios, Out for Glory, Lachlan Bear, and Al Wesga, as well as having driven to win the mighty Koala King, the Great Gamelite, the fantastic Friendly Footman, and the tough Black Trick, plus a number of others. Brian Gath, a World Driving Championship representative. Brian Hancock, a world-class trainer. Between them, thousands of wins. The masters have developed an admiration for each other's expertise. Off the track, friends. On the track, they go separate ways. They're businessmen, two of the most astute in the sport of harness racing. They are Masters of the Sulky. Brian Hancock has twice found himself in the winner's circle of the Inter-Dominion Grand Final. In 1980 as a driver, piloting the famous speedy Koala King.
Into the straight, it's Frostium. Lacano going up, the driver looks back, he has it. Here's Koala King with that great burst at the finish. It's Lacano just in front. Koala King down the outside, takes it out. What a great win. Koala King beats Lacano, maybe Jawsfield.
Then a decade later, Hancock trained Tasmanian-bred Thorate to win the most prestigious event in harness racing.
On the turn in the Inter-Dominion, Thorate goes to the front. Jane Ellen can't go on. Thorate's in front. Coming hard, Gaelic Skipper. Thorate in front of the Inter-Dominion, and Thorate's going to win. Thorate wins it by 5 metres. Second placing goes to Gaelic Skipper. We earn a chief third, then Westburn Grant.
Brian Hancock, the master trainer, gives us an in-depth look at what is attributed to his success, the recipe, and with it some of the most prized information, hints and genius for all of us to admire.
Brian, is there much difference between training a young horse and an older one?
Training a young horse and an older horse is a fair bit of difference, I think, because you can do a lot of damage to a young horse because he's only a baby and he's sort of, his bones are not set, so you got to take your time with them a little bit and let them tell you how they want to be worked and that sort of thing. So I feel working young horses, it's a very hard, I think. It's very hard on you, and you've got to be very careful with them. With an older horse, you get an older horse, a Grand Circuit or a Harold Park horse, or, as we say, bread and butter horses. They go through the motions, they're pretty good to train, and there's no problems with them, really.
Well, after breaking in with a young horse, what's the general preparation then?
Well, young horses, you sort of, it's a long-term sort of thing. It's 12 months to 14 months trying to get them ready to race and all that sort of thing. So you're in and out with them sort of in for 5 or 6 weeks and out for a month or 6 weeks and back in again, and then they sort of really, I'll let you know after the third preparation whether they're going to go on with it or not.
With the breaking in, does a horse tell you how long it will take to break him?
Well, it depends on the horse's attitude towards getting broken. It's some take 6 weeks, some take 8 or 9 weeks. All depends. I generally vary. I'd say on average I take about 6 weeks to break a horse in.
Any difference between colts and fillies generally?
Yeah, there is. I think there's a lot of difference between colts and fillies because you get a little filly gets a bit dirty. They seem to get crankier more than a colt does, the fillies. So they do take a little bit of time.
With training your horses, you've been a great believer in varying their routines. How important is that?
I think it's very important because I think the biggest problem with horses is it's a boredom thing, and I do vary their training. And if I get a horse out of the paddock, for instance, he's come to me. He has about 6 to 8 weeks jog work. He starts off on 15 minutes a day for about the first 3 or 4 days, and then I build up 5 minutes a day to about a half hour to 35 minutes. I don't jog any longer than 35 minutes. It was the days I jogged 45 minutes and 40 minutes, but I'm down about 35 minutes now.
And foundation stage is very important for you?
The foundation of a horse, the longer foundation you put into him, the longer he'll stay up. I find that a horse, you take a Grand Circuit horse, he's around about, say like your horses we own, a Chief, Thorate, Pat McCoy and them horses, and they take about 12 to 14, say 16 weeks to get to the races. And the foundation work is very important for bone structure and all that sort of thing.
Your training routine, I guess, is based on the American interval training scheme, but there's been a lot of adaptations.
Yeah, well, I don't do it the American way. They go out and do trips in miles and come back. I sort of do 2 trips. I jog for, say, 15 minutes when I go on the track warming up. Then I'd work a mile, I'd say 2 mile, my first heat right-handed. I might work 4 or 5 horses together, and I'll walk for 7 to 8 to 10 minutes, varying on the horse. He sort of lets you know when he's sort of recovered. I don't let him fully recover. Then I work back a mile and a half right-handed, and they all finish together. I might work a half in about a minute or 1-1. All depends on the horse, but I never I very seldom, I don't really try a horse out at home.
You work them right-handed the first trip, left-handed the second trip. Why right-handed?
Variation in training. I feel that I do it that way, that they get they get adapted to it or what, but they do. My horses do get to like it that way, and I find that it's variation in training and cut the boredom out.
Now, there's some horses there that really aren't suited by this interval training scheme, if you like to call it. That 4-penny dark is a great example.
Yeah, well, she's a little mare that don't take a lot of work. She's a high-speed mare, and most of the race she does get a bit tired at the end of the races, and I don't do a lot of trip work with her. She does most of her. She does 1 trip, and that's what I go down. I suppose is basically the old-fashioned way I used to do years ago. Was go down, I jog her for 10 or 15 minutes and work her a mile and a half and bring her home, and it does suit her. She has one of a $250,000, so that does suit her, and that's up to your individual horses. And I've got other horses that do the same thing. There's some horses that can take the work and there's others that can't. And I feel with our breed today, the American breed, that they are getting less and less taking the work.
Well, how can you tell how much work a horse needs?
Well, that's years and years of, I suppose, practice or looking at a horse, you know. I think the most important thing about training is observation. It's very important that the observation of the horse is very, very important. It's, you know, look at your horse in the morning when you get out of the stable and really go over and look at it, and jogging around when you're doing your jog work, say, you look at a horse and see how he feels, and observation is very important with horses.
What do you look for?
Well, there's all sorts of things you can look for. His eye, his coat, how's he feel, how's he eating. There's a lot of things that you can look for, you know, and when you have the horse long enough and you live with them, you get to know their peculiarities, and it's no real problem.
You've been a great believer in weighing horses too.
Yeah, well, I find that weighing horses is very good. It makes training a little bit easier, I think, because when a horse gets to his correct weight and his racing weight, I think he's pretty easy to train then. And you don't overdo him, as I said before. You're not working him and sort of doing this. You can do a little bit of getting weight off with a feed bucket.
One horse you trained and used successfully, the weighing method, was Jungle Habits.
Yeah, well, he was a little horse that his weighing was very vital to him. He'd get to about 4:29 and he was racing good. Then he'd get to about 4:35, 36, and he wasn't worth 2 bob. But I'd say that it did really work wonders with him, and he did win, I think, 120,000 in the season. So it did work with him, and I felt that it was really good for him.
Well, Standardbreds are a far more durable breed than their thoroughbred counterparts, but Brian, even they can't back up on some occasions 2 or 3 times in a week.
No, I think, as I've said earlier, that our breed is a lot tougher, but I find our breed is getting a lot more finely bred these days. I think you're going to find the next 10 to 15 years that we're going to be like the thoroughbreds. They're going to be not take the work and not the racing. I think they'll race once a week, or, you know, I feel that we're getting, our lines are getting very finely bred. And the old-fashioned horses, the bred cut horses, they're just about going out of our breed, and I feel that it's going to get that way. And I think it's a great thing that's happening that way, getting a speedy horse and a faster horse.
Well, Brian, what do you look for in conformation?
Well, I like to see a nice boned horse, and I think it's this day and age that we've got to look at a bit of size in horses these days. We're sort of buying the small horses on the out, and I've been there and done that and bought smaller ones. It's never sort of worked out. I feel like to buy the athletic sort of type of horse, and that's about all I can look for, you know, and their pedigree. If they're nice temperaments, they walk into the ring nice and quiet, and look for a nice quiet horse.
Do you find that horses that you've trained by one particular sire or one particular from one particular family will inherit the genes of that family?
Oh, yes, very well. I find that the genes that they're there from the day one. You know, that I've had like at this time, it makes me feel old, but I'm racing a lot of stock now of mares I've raced over the years, and I know a lot of their parents' attitudes are there. You know, so I feel that it does really come out. And there's some stallions I've had no luck with, and there's others I haven't. You know, but I feel that with our stallions, that the trainer that gets the stock, I think he's the last bloke to get the article, and I think he's the last guy that can really criticise a stallion or a mare. And I feel that we do get into trouble sometimes, so we don't like that one, we don't like this one, but the breeder breeds him, the agent sells him, we buy him for a client, and we're the last person to get the article, and I think we're entitled to criticise the horse more than anybody else.
You don't only train, Brian, you also run a business. When do you know when to quit a horse, when it's the right time to tell an owner to let go?
Well, you know, we quit a lot of horses, and it's all you do is tell the owner the truth and say, well, this is going to go this far. It's up to him, make his own opinion, you know, if he wants to pay the bills or what. But I quit a lot of horses. You know, I say I've quit some a bit earlier than I should have, but you look at the cost in training horses today, so you do quit a good few horses.
Horsemanship is an art, Brian, there's no doubt about it. What advice would you give to anyone young starting out in the training game?
Well, I've got to say this, that I was very fortunate. I was brought up in the business, in the horse business. My father was trained horses, he was a drover and all that sort of thing, and my brother Dick, he was sort of 10 years ahead of me, so you've got all that sort of thing ahead of me. But I find that I done a lot of reading, and I left school when I was 14, but I done a lot of care and train the trotter and pace. I read a lot of books on it. I was very fortunate. I came up in an era that some great trainers asked a lot of questions, and I found that a lot of the leading trainers, I'd say 99% of the leading trainers, were never too frightened to give a little bit of word of advice, and which was great. I asked, I had the pleasure of Kane Newmans and the Kevin Robinsons and the Bill Shins and all these guys that come through, and the Laurie Moleses and the Vic Frost, and they always have time to sit down and have a yarn to you and explain to you. And the one thing I learnt with them was that they say always, all of them said, that's the way I do it. And it's a very important word, I do it. They never told you how to do it. That's the way I do it. So you put two and two together and work your own sort of theory out and put a bit of theirs together, and they was all good. And I feel any young bloke get in the business, he's don't be frightened to ask the leading guys, because I would say they all help.
If anything goes seriously wrong with a horse, Brian, I guess consult a vet, but there's many things around the stable that the trainers can do themselves.
A lot of things that we can do ourselves. You know, I use a vet, I use Andrew Daniels, but I feel that I do use him a fair bit. But he does a lot of sailing for him, you know, salt trenches and all that sort of thing. And if you're really worried, you get your vet out, and that's the best way. You know, he's only a matter of a phone call away and he's here. But to most of us, we do use a vet, and I feel that they're a very important part of our business. You know, and I give the horses teeth done every 3 months. That's very important.
Saline drenches, Brian, how important are they, particularly in the hotter weather?
Well, there's some say they don't do it that much, but I'm a very heavy sailiner. I do a lot of sailing, and I feel that our horses are under stress and they're working hard and using a lot of energy and a lot of salts. So I do saline fairly heavy.
When you say fairly heavy, what do you mean?
I do them once a week, twice a week, you know, on my racing, and I live in my climate is very good. We don't get any, we never get any real cold weather. We get a fairly bit of hot weather. We don't get it's a pretty good climate where I live. We don't get a frost or anything like that, and we never get really hot days. But we get a lot of humidity on the coast, and it's very hard on horses. So I find that I've got to sail on a fair bit. Putting the ice pack on this horse's leg because he's got a bit of swelling in the fetlock joint, and it's not serious swelling, but I've just felt that a bit of ice on him won't hurt him for 20 minutes, and you put the ice on for about 20 minutes, no longer, because otherwise you will incline to blister the horse's leg. So don't go any longer than 20 minutes. Some say a half hour or that, but I always go on that to 20 minutes to be safe. As we've seen, this horse has just finished his work, and he's dried off now naturally in the sun. We've towelled him off earlier, then we go along now and we go along clean him up, which I really clean up with a wipe him over with a towel. I find the towel softer and more gentle, and the horses seem to like. I don't use a body brush much at all. Only brush I use the mane and tail brush, and we generally wipe him over. And I think a lot of your coat comes from out of the feed bucket. If you look after him good enough for the feed bucket, it's a lot better, I think. But what we do, we go right over the horse and wipe him all over and check him all over, and any nicks or anything on him, we put a bit of ointment on, a bit of cream or anything like that to sort of keep it soft. And I use a mane and tail brush to brush his mane and tail, which is the horse likes it. And we'll click around that, then we get his mane up and do it right. But you'll find that most horses like getting their mane and tail brushed, and I feel that, as I said earlier, I feel that I'd rather use a towel to wipe them off and clean them up. And I'd say 95% of my horses I rub into all their shin and tendon boots with a product they call R-iodine, which I find does a nice job. It's you haven't got to rub it in really hard, but I find it, you know, about 20 seconds or 30 seconds, it's rubbing their shin and their tendons and their fetlock joint. And it was given to me by an old trainer years ago by the name of Billy Shin from South Australia, and I've used it for years. They all get to like it. It's like yourself, you know, you don't mind getting a rub with it. It's really good. We do all that. Then we paint their feet with an oil It's a hoof oil. I think they get it from out Burke somewhere. They melt down a horse's hooves or something with it. But I find it very good and clean. And we paint their feet. Why? Because you can check their feet and see if the shoes are right. And it's good for their feet. And but you know, it's no use painting a horse's feet unless you go underneath too and sort of do it all over. And don't hurt in the coronet band. And you'll
Will you paint them each time you work?
Yeah, every day. The horses' feet are painted every day. We paint them every day because the simple reason is it's a nice checking point too. I don't do my own blacksmithing. As I work a team of 35 to 40 horses, and the staff can check their feet. A horse wants a nail in or something. It's very good for that. I feel that you're checking the horse right out.
What about quarter cracks, Brian? Do you look for them?
Yeah, you do find quarter cracks, but I think it relies a lot on your shoeing, and but you don't get many quarter cracks. And I feel that if they're shod correctly and looked after, you cut that quarter crack business out. So we do that. The last thing I do with them when I finish is that they put some Vicks put on his nostrils, just a smear, because I find it's a great product and it clears the horse's head. Plus it does help prevent a little bit of coughs and colds, and I find it's great. So that's the last thing we do with the horse. So then we go over and give him a pat and a check over, and when he's, as I've said, he's been checked over and all over, then he goes back into his box and finishes his breakfast off. And I hope he has a great day doing it.
As a trainer, Brian, how can you best help your horse?
Well, I think as a trainer, I think there's about 4 or 5 things that's very important. As I said, observation of the horse. If you're in doubt, call a vet. Make sure your vet can come out to you. Worming, which there's a lot of worms on the market. There's paste and there's, your vet can worm with a tube, stomach tube. There's all sorts of worms on the market. So I feel that is covered very well in this day and age with our stock. And getting a horse's teeth done. I feel that you should get a horse's teeth done every 3 months, because they sharpen up and they get in, they grind and eat in wrong ways. And because a horse in the paddock can look after his own teeth really, but a horse that's in work, he's got to use his teeth other ways. So I feel that you should get the horse's teeth done every 3 months, and make sure you get a recognised dentist to do it, a horse dentist to do it, and there's no problems. And I feel that's one of the most important things, is to do those 4 things.
In the United States, worming can occur about every 30 days or so.
Yeah, well, in the States they worm about every 30 days to 40 days sort of thing, But one of the leading trainers over there, Bruce Nichols, he does it every 30 days. It's just so regular with him.
In track work, do you ever give your horses a kill?
Yeah, I do that a fair bit, I think. Not a fair bit. All my horses finish together. I make sure that there's 3 or 4 go across the line together. They all finish together. That's your 21, your open horse to your lower grade horse. They all sort of finish together and give them all a bit of confidence.
Winning races is more than just racetrack ability, though, for a horse. It's confidence a lot too, isn't it?
Well, I think a mental attitude of a horse is very important. We've got, I feel that the mental attitude is more important than most things. We talked on a lot of things on this video, but I feel that mental attitude to a horse is very, very important. And it's like you and I going down the road running. If I beat you for 2 days in a row or the 3rd day in a row, you're going to say, blow me, I'm not going to chase him, I can't beat him. And that does happen with horses.
How do you get their mental attitude right?
Well, you work on it. And I feel it starts from day one when you start breaking them in and all that sort of thing. And I feel that you've got to have their mental attitude very good. Let's face it, they're not really a dumb animal.
Gear has a lot to do with it, though. You're a great believer in lugging poles. Not many people use them.
Well, I don't say I'm a great believer in lugging poles, but I've had a lot of success with lugging poles. I say these 3 or 4 handicap horses all wear lugging poles for the simple reason they're going a lot faster. And I feel that with lugging poles and a horse that just has to tap his knee a little bit, the straighter you keep him, the better. I feel that's why I use a fair few lug and poles, and a horse only looks sideways in my barn, and I put a pole on him, you know. That's the old habit, you know, the old guys used to say he's sore or something like that, and I felt that, you know, they might have been right on some occasions, but I felt that 85% the horse wasn't sore, he was just absolutely bloody cunning. And you put a pole on him, and I felt it straightened up, you know. And some people don't have success with poles, they seem to put up too tight on them. I feel I never put a really tight lug and pole on my horses, and I've had a lot of success, and I nearly all my horses wear knee boots. I don't wear a lot of shin and tendon boots. I feel I've had, it does cause a lot of breakdowns in horses and tendon problems and all that, and you drive the horse in races that you know he hasn't got shin and tendon boots, so you don't put him where he shouldn't be. This is my morning feed. I feed rolled oats because I find they digest it better. I feed loosened chaff. It's a nice quality soft loosened chaff. And I feed a scoop of natural E of a morning. And the reason I feed the E of a morning is, in their morning feed, is that if you put it in on a night feed, in with the iron, there's no goodness in it.
Feed to Succeed with Brian Hancock. The morning feed suggested about 7 o'clock. Rolled oats, because the rolling helps digestion. Loosened chaff, it's highly palatable and it's good roughage. And Troy Natural E, it's best for them in the morning because they retain their goodness during the day.
This is my night feed, and you've got to understand that your night feed is your most important meal of the day for a horse. I feed him one dipper of rolled oats, which I've said earlier in my morning feed, they digest it better. I feed 2 dippers of cracked corn, and I buy the corn whole and I crack it myself because you get everything out of it then. And that's the reason I buy it, I crack it myself. Right, I feed a dipper of pollock, which is it's part of the wheat, and I find that they really do good on it, and they like it. I feed a dipper of barley, a nice double, or around about a double handful of barley, which I'm talking in dippers, which is pretty hard to explain to some guys. It's a rolled barley it's in molasses, so they really like it. And I feed a dipper of sunflower seed, which they love that, and it's very good for their coat, and it's high in protein. Then I put a dipper of loosened chaff in. As I've said earlier in my breakfast feed, it's a nice loosen. I feed my additives then, and I feed potassium, about a level spoonful of potassium. Because once you get most horses' blood counts are always a bit low on potassium, I find it better if I feed it to them every day. Then I feed me additives, which I feed this product, and I find it's quite good. It's got calcium and all the vitamins in it. And I feed the iron, and I feed about 60 mils a day. I just pump it up and put in this, and I find I put in the top of the feed, mix it up, and that's their night feed. Then all my horses have got the secret, I think, is to keep only feed twice a day, but I think my secret is to good clover hay. And that's the sort of clover hay I feed. It's a good, lovely, soft clover hay. And I don't feed loosened hay, but I find that the secret of my feeding and keeping weight on horses and racing well is clover hay.
Night feeds from 4 till 4:30. Again, rolled oats, rolling to help digestion. Then, loosened chaff, it's highly palatable and it's great roughage. Cracked corn retains protein, it's nutritious. Pollard keeps weight on and horses like it. Sunflower seeds are good for the coat and they like to eat them. Barley, rolled in molasses, it's a good tonic and it helps the appetite. Potassium, it's good for the blood. Troy Hossaminar, it's a supplement providing vitamins such as calcium. Troy Ironsill provides the necessary iron. And clover hay, it's palatable and horses love to eat it.
Well, it comes race day, you've done your part, you've got the horse fit, he's ready to go, and then there's the trip to the racetrack. How important is it to have your horse comfortable on the float?
Very important. I float horses. I'm 100 kilometres from Harold Park, and most of my horses are you know, I float a truck, and I've got an 8-horse truck, of course, and I like to, as I said earlier, that I do shampoo my horses, get them ready and fluff them up, and the trip was an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I think it's very important to have a horse comfortable to go to the races, and ventilation, the float and all that sort of thing, and I feel it's very important.
Well, you're a Grand Circuit campaigner of some note. When you travel a horse long distances, do you like to break the trip up or go for one hit?
Well, it all depends on some, like I thought I could get in a float and go from here to America, wouldn't worry him. A horse like Leona Chief or Pappy McCoy and them other horses, they like the trip broken up, and they're not real good, they're not that good of floaters, but I do like to break the trip down. I'd like to fly them everywhere if I could, but it's just the extras kill you.
Well, you get to the track, what do you look for when you check your horse?
Well, it's all, you know, the first thing we do when we get to the racetrack is that that Mark makes sure he undoes our bag and makes sure everything's there, because there's nothing worse than getting the races and you've left a set of hobbles at home or a lugging pile at home or something, you've got to go and borrow gear, but that don't happen very, very often, so we just sort of check and make everything's there and everything's sort of settled in, the horses settled in, they've brushed and cleaned their mane and tails up and put a little bit of Vicks in their nose and everything's right for them, and we just hope for the best and when we get to the racetrack.
In latter years, the warm-up has become an integral part of Australian racing. You're a great believer in it?
Love it. I approached then Kevin Pascoe, the Chief Steward at the Harness Racing Authority. I'm going back 9 or 10 years ago with a certain mare I had, and matter of fact it was Rena Geldi, and I could I warm up and he wouldn't let me. And I've been at it for, say, 10 or 12 years, and all of a sudden these things have happened. Now we can warm up, and you know, I think it's very, very important that a horse is warmed up. You haven't got to go out and go real hard with him or what, but just going out and jogging around and look after him. I feel that our footballers warm up, all our athletes warm up, and they're the same. They're tuned up athletes, so I feel warming up is very, very important.
Is there a difference between the warm-up and the actual preliminary?
Not a lot of difference. I warm up a little bit harder than I do on a trim, I think, but most guys warm up. We just go in, I might warm up 2 mile and come back in and walk until the race is on, and I feel it's really good. I do when I come up from a warm-up. I think it's very important when I warm up, and not a lot of guys always throw a rug over them and keep them fairly warm. I think that's very important. If you've warmed them up, why bring them back into the saddle and yard and walk them out for another half hour and they cool out and everything. But I do throw a rug on them, a felt rug on them and keep them warm.
When you take your horse up to the gate, do you like him relaxed or up on his toes?
Well, most of mine are all relaxed. I feel the relaxed horse is a better horse. We speak on, you know, the more the horse is relaxed, the better he is, there's no doubt. It's like any athlete or anything. A G'd up one is going to do something wrong, he's thinking about something. All my horses, and I feel that, I feel quite proud of actually that 90% of my horses are relaxed. And the reason is it all starts from home with me heat work and all that, relaxation and all that. I really work on relaxing the horse. I feel it's very, very important, and my horses come up the gate pretty relaxed up and get on the gate, and I have no problems. You know, you get the odd one that plays up or does something, but I'd say 90% of them are all relaxed horses.
Is it a different preparation for a horse from a standing start than from a mobile?
No, I don't think there's any difference from mobile or stand. I feel a horse either goes away or he don't. You know, I can tell you a story. I drove a horse, a great horse. I got a great record. I've had 5 drives and 5 wins on him. It was a horse named Gemelite. And I won the Bankstown Cup on him one night as a standing start, and I spoke to Leo kind of what we were going to do, how we were going to work out, and I did say to Leo, I said, what if he gallops away? And he said, well, that's not your fault, boy, you should know better.
When that gate flies, what's the greatest attribute you as a trainer can have given that horse?
Confidence in himself, and hope you give him a good trip, because all your work's done, and I feel that I get a bigger buzz out of training horses than driving them. I feel that you've worked on the machine for the last 6 or 7 months or 3 months, whatever it is, that you've got a horse to the races, and you really get a buzz out when he gets to the race and wins a race as a trainer. You know, I've drove a lot of winners, but I do get a big buzz out of training horses, and I do love training horses.
The favourite clear in the Winter Cup. Straightening up and Thorate leads by 3. Henry Luger runs into second spot. Talara Dream running on out wide. Thorate clear, 70 metres left to go. And Thorate goes on to win the Winter Cup. Thorate first.
Brian Gath's biggest thrill was also his biggest success, driving and training the mighty Markovina to win the 1978 Inter-Dominion Grand Final at Moonee Valley.
On the turn, Markovina's raced up to hit the front. Markovina the leader into the straight with Junction Road, Velvet Prince. Out wide, Soul Command, Trailface Adios got badly checked. Markovina the leader with 50 metres to go. He's just in front of Velvet Prince. Soul Command, DeMonte Hanover flying with a Hermosa Star. Markovina in front of the line, and he's won it by a metre to Hermosa Star.
Gath is acclaimed universally as a master reinsman, the best in the business. Here, Brian Gath unveils his secrets to success.
Well, Brian, you know, not only as a great driver of your own horses, but also as a catch driver, a freelance driver, you drive many, many horses that you've never seen before. How important is it to have driven a horse before the actual race?
Well, with me, it's not that important, you know. If you know too much about them, you can get a bit confused. Someone might say to you, look, this horse likes to lead. Another guy say, I think he comes better from behind, or he might pull, or this, that, and the other. And a lot of the time, you get false information. It's all right if you see him yourself racing from time to time, you might form an opinion, but I don't like to take too much notice of what anybody tells me about them, really. I just like to get on and drive them, and I often can sort them out in the preliminary, what I think they might do and what I've seen myself. So I don't think it's all that necessary to know as much as people say. I like to just feel them out, you know. They feel like they've got speed, I'll try and use it early to cross them. They feel sluggish, well, maybe I might back off and come round and drive more like a stayer, but I don't think you have to be filled up with too much information, Marshall.
Well, Brian, when you say they feel sluggish or they feel speedy, how can you tell from just a preliminary?
Well, I sometimes just take the horse out and try and keep him reasonably placid and just let him stride the first round nicely and talk to him a lot and have a feel whether he's listening to me. If I find a horse responds to my voice, well, I get along well with him, you know. I might just call a girlie or if it's a boy, just talk to him nice, you know, and everything. But I often just let them roll where the mobile's going to start. If they start at the 2,300 metre race down the back of Moonee Valley about the second time round, I might just give them a little sounds down the back to see how they feel, you know. If I whistle them up and they really light up, well, then I say to myself, this horse has got a bit of speed. You can tell if they've got speed.
The fastest part of any race is the start, particularly out of the mobile. You're a great mobile barrier driver. What do you look for, not only with your own horse, but with other drivers? What signs are there that they want to come out of the gate or that they probably might go back at the start? Well,
most drivers, if you drive against them on a regular basis, are fairly predictable. You can sometimes tell whether, so like Gavin Lang's a very relaxed driver and doesn't show much emotion. He just walks around the prelim, goes to the gate nice and casual, but on an odd occasion, he might just sort of, you know, turn the whip around and just liven his horse up 1% more than he usually does going to the gate. So you say to yourself, he might be a bit harder to cross tonight, one thing or another like that, you know. And you look out for horses that are fiery, and you look how they're geared up. If one's got a Norton bit or something on and he's, you know, frothing at the mouth and all steamed up and he's drawn about 3 and you're drawn 5, you can rest assured that horse is going to fire out the gate pretty quick. But you see another horse that's pretty lazy and he's hanging off the gate, and you might have all the intentions of the world. If you're drawn about 6 or 7, you're going to go back. But in the score-up, you look across and there's a couple of drivers restraining, and other drivers are livening their horses up, but they're not responding to them. And you say to yourself, my bloke feels quick, I might just let this horse rush out a bit, you know. And you often got to change your mind the first 10 seconds of an event. Totally different to what you first thought when you looked at the fields and what people said about their horses. So it's important to watch a lot of things, and especially before the barrier is the time to look out for horses that got hobble shorteners on for a start. If they're up about 3 holes, that's just, you know, then the horse must have need that little bit of help to get out of the gate, and he may have speed. Then you see another horse with hobble short and he's up 10 holes. But I immediately say to myself, he couldn't possibly have a lot of speed to be up that tight in his gear, because if they've got real tight hobbles, I found they come out safe but don't have a lot of speed. So little things like that I look out for, and it's helped me over the years, you know.
Well, you come out of the gate, you want to go backwards, your horse wants to go forward. Is it best to fight him or let him go?
Oh, let him stride. It's not much point in fighting your horse any part of the race. I think they do more damage reefing and pulling, and if you're caught 3 wide, I've won races 3 wide all the way, even around the Melbourne Showgrounds, providing the horse races there relaxed. You may not have enough speed at the first turn to cross him, but if you sit real quiet and the field slows down, he's got a bit of strength, and you can just sort of sit back off the 3 wide back a little bit and half trailing a wheel. Sometimes the horse can stay 3 wide and still come on in the straight, because you've got to remember, if the leader's not much good and the deaf seat horse is struggling, anything that beats you's either got to get out. So if you keep them boxed up and don't try and go forward too much, you sit there. Well, the ones on the inside may not get out, and anything that's got to come 4 wide's got to be awfully good, and you might have done a power work to come round 4 wide to get to you. So if you've got a horse with a bit of heart, you sit quiet enough and hold him together and cuddle him up. Sometimes they'll just stride off in the straight and win.
Do most horses have 2 sprints?
No. But nowadays, they should have. Though you've got to show early speed out of the gate to retain a position, and most horses only have 1 sprint left in them at the finish, you know. But sometimes you can regulate that speed, you know. You might be able to just make a move in the race, but don't go to their top marshal, you understand? You know, if you explode a horse once, that's generally the end of him, but maybe if he's got a quarter in 27 in him, or maybe if the field went slow, you might sneak 2 quarters in 29 somewhere in the run, you know, to get yourself in a position so you've got some hope of running them down, you know.
How bad is the death seat?
I don't think it's bad at all. I look for it a lot, no matter what horse I drive. The first place I look for is the lead. The second place I look for is maybe the death seat on the average horse, because you've often got control of the race in the death seat. See, a lot of the horses I drive are near favourites, so I mean, it does help me. But if you're driving a near favourite, he should be able to face the breeze if he's a kind horse, and you almost got as much control as the race as the guy that's in front, because if you hang back and there's a nice horse behind the leader, the chances are the leader will try and slow down and keep the guy behind you boxed up, so you can slow the pace off a bit. Or if you're outside the leader and you don't really want to be there, at least you can drop back and entice someone to come round your muscle, you know. So you can finish up 1 out, 1 back from the death seat if you need to be, you know.
It has all changed though since you started driving. The death seat was taboo 25 years ago.
Yes, it was, but I think that a bonny mare I raced called Aflo, she changed that at the Melbourne Showgrounds. No one wanted the death seat, but I couldn't get there quick enough on her. I won a lot of races there, and I started racing a lot of my horses in a regular doing that, and I found that it was pretty good. And after talking to Bill Shin for a long time once, he was telling me that just what I just explained to you, that the death seat's not bad at all. And I started throwing my horses there a lot and drive there a lot, and I don't mind driving in the death seat. I think that you know, you can pressurise the leader when you feel like it, and if you don't really want to work too hard in the death, we'll drop back a length or 2. It doesn't really matter. They might pop out and give you a trail or whatever, but you can work yourself forward, coming to the bell if need be, and I tell you, you've got a lot of control of the race in the death seat if you've got a nice pony, you know.
Behind the leader, you're turning for home, the leader's done plenty of work. Do you sit and wait for the run to come, or do you try and pull out?
If he's done plenty of work, I'd be looking to bullet me way out. If I thought he'd worked hard, if the leader drew wide and he chased him out hard and maybe he got pressurised once during the run, I think going into the back, I'd be looking to come out. Even if I have to drop back a cart and a half and start bulleting me way out, get off the fence from behind him, because most horses in front, if they're tiring, you don't really get a clear run. You can get out following a horse that hasn't done much work because he might kick away or whatever, but a tiring front runner, you don't want to be following him.
It isn't worth waiting to get the run inside him?
Well, I mean, you're only really taking your chance. If he's going to be a tiring front runner, I feel that if you're travelling good enough, I think you're entitled to try and push out and get yourself out off the fence, you know. If you're following a horse that's reasonably good, I suggest that you don't drive hard up on their back in the last lap and a half, maybe, from about coming to the bell. If you knew you were snookered and you was behind a nice horse, you'd best to drop off the guy's back and going into the back the last time, maybe get back 3/4 of the length, and then the driver senses you're not hard on his back, and sometimes he feels that maybe your horse is weakening, or you're not a danger to him, you're not constantly on his mind. Even though he doesn't want to kick away, you'll mostly find about half around the home turn they'll let the leader slip away, and then you can go through and get out. But if you drive hard up on their back on the home turn and you've got your head over the guy's shoulder, well, you're telling him you're going to beat him, and he won't roll away and let you go. So if you hang back a bit, sometimes you get a run. I think I drove Koala King in the Hunter Cup in Melbourne when he won. Vinny Knight drove Kotari Knight. Well, he was bolting down the back, Vinny, had them all on toast bar me, and he's a sweet little pony to drive, Koala King, so I started to ease him off a little bit and just let him drop back, and then Vinny looked around once, he looked around twice, he said no dangers, he kicked on halfway down the straight, and Koala King just went whoosh straight through and done him. Well, he wouldn't have kicked away if he thought I was travelling good. It's just that Vinny thought, well, I couldn't be going that good because I dropped off, you know. So, you know, if I was following Kotari Knight and he was under the whip down the back, I wouldn't want to follow him any longer. I'd be looking to get off the fence.
As a driver, what are your thoughts about looking around in races?
I don't like it too much. I think you show your hand a little bit. If you're in front and you're travelling okay, I think that you want to look like you're travelling okay and you're no concern of the ones behind you. You should have a feel. If there's horses behind you, you're not going to let them out. If you're striding nice in front, I'd say you start looking around, you're enticing people to come and take you on or something. And I feel that if concentrate on the horse, never take the eyes off his ears, talk to him, look after him, and don't worry about the others and let the others worry about you.
What can their ears tell you?
A lot of things, Marshall, you know. They'll tell you whether sometimes you might be driving in a race and you might be fall back on the fence. I watch my own horse's ears, and I also look at the leader, especially in the race, sort of glimpse at him a lot to see what he's doing, maybe the horse in front of me, because the ears will tell you a lot. There might be a race book blower out under the fence. The first thing the horse do, his ears will go forward, and you look at it, and he won't do anything till his ears go forward, and instantaneously you can ease back and come off the fence a little bit, give yourself a chance if they broke in front of you. That's the only way you're going to know what a horse is going to do by his ears. If you never take your eyes off his ears, or the ones in ahead of you, the chances are you can avoid a lot of racing incidents.
Do you like racing with earplugs?
Yes, I do. Keeps horses relaxed. I think horses will always race better if they're racing in a relaxed state, and earplugs keeps a lot of the noise away from them, and the crowd doesn't worry them as much. The atmosphere is a little bit dull, and of course, once again, when you pull them out, a lot of horses respond very good when you pull them out, because the rush of the crowd and the noise, they'll prick their ears and they'll really run, you know.
Now, when do you usually go for that adrenaline boost for them?
Only if I think I'm going to get beat. If I can win without pulling them out, I will. And that's the last resort. If I pull them out, I'm in a bit of trouble, you know. Some horses respond once or twice when you release the earplugs, but then other times you pull them out and it seems to have a worse effect. They'll sort of feel, hello, I'm in trouble now, the earplugs are out, the pressure's on, and they'll give up. So I'm inclined to leave them in if I'm doing good enough, you know.
You talk a lot about leading, Brian, and you're known as a front-running driver. How do you judge speed? Do you go out there with an idea that you want to run such and such a time, or do you let the horse tell you by his actions?
I let the horses tell me by their actions. I think that just let the horse go to the front, just relax him a little bit and just let him stride. I think that nowadays, if you try and go too slow, you'll get guys will come out and take you on. So you need to run in my opinion, by the feel of the horse just below his top, that he can keep going, he can see out the journey, but you have a feeling there's a little kick left in him, and that's all you can expect of any horse, that to keep striding and be able to fight on when need be. So you don't want to go too slow. I always like them, let's just stride comfortably, and just like in a track trial, just have them striding nice, that you felt like maybe if you got challenged, they can put their head down and do a bit extra.
Well, you straighten up for the run home, you're in front, the danger's behind you, the horse in the death seat is starting to drop off. Your horse is tiring, he's starting to get off the track. What do? Do you let him drift out, or you try to bring him back on top of the other horse?
Well, I think if you're straightening up and I'd allow him to shift a little bit in moderation. Sometimes I've overdone it a little bit and been suspended, one thing and another. But if a horse is getting tired and he's hanging out a little bit, provided he's not going to interfere with the other horse outside him, you need to let him just hang out a little bit, because if you start pulling him back to the fence, he's lost his concentration and he starts to get tighter. And I'd say that you've got to allow horses to shift a bit to keep them going.
You have a look over the left-hand shoulder to see where the other horse is?
If I thought he was a danger, I'd try and work my way back and don't let him completely through. Just you got to keep an eye on everything in a race. Danger's outside, inside. There's only so much you can do to win a race, and you've got to give your horse every possible chance, and you can't interfere with other guys, but you have to be aware of other runners in the run. Sometimes dangers can be coming from the outside, and then all of a sudden they're not finishing on, and then your danger's on the inside. So you've got to be a happy medium. You don't want to be drifting out too much or going back too much. You just got to hold your ground and keep horses at bay if you can.
Well, your father, the great George Gath, always said win the race first and argue about it later. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I've generally lost my arguments. That's the problem. I used to follow his footsteps, and I've lost a few races through drifting out too much or whatever. And but still in all, like I say, it's not a bad policy.
I guess the video footage of races has changed conditions a lot for drivers now.
Yes, it has. Stewards are aware of what's going on. They're very good, the videos. Stewards are on every corner. I think it's improved a lot. You've got to really stick to the rules, and if you can bend them a little bit here and there, but most of the time that you've got to keep a straight line.
Well, Brian, when you're driving, most times you sit nice and quietly until the last 100 metres or so, and then you go for a horse. You see time and time again drivers letting go of their horses' heads and reins everywhere.
I've done that too. If there's any mistakes been made, I've possibly made them, but I feel that you learn by your mistakes, and the more you cuddle the horse up and nurse him along, and if you don't have to go for a horse to win, don't go for him, because he'll respond better the next time. He'll win with a bit up his sleeve, feel confident, and a lot of horses I drive sometimes they are gone, but I don't try not to let them know they're gone. And if I'm holding them at bay and just holding them at bay, if I can win by a neck, that's better than going for the whip and find out that you soured him off, and then they often can stop. So if you think you can just do enough to hold them at bay, that's often enough. And if you're game enough to ask them for any more, sometimes there's nothing there, and they'll give up on you.
When horses are headed, do they usually give up?
Yes, they do.
Why?
Well, they've probably been hammered pretty hard to hold them at bay, and then once the horse heads them, well, they have a feeling, well, they've done me, They have that feeling that they'll cave in pretty quick when the horse is headed. Occasionally, if you haven't drove him too hard throughout, that you may get headed. For different reasons you mightn't go. There might be a horse behind you travelling so well, the horse outside you's got you under a bit of pressure, and he's a danger to you, but the guy behind you might be bolting. You might get into the straight, and you have to weigh it up a little bit. If you kick a bit to hold the guy outside you, and there may be one 4 wide heading him, and they're all under the whip, and they're doing a shade better than you while you still got your horse control of him and holding him up. It's the guy behind you sometimes has got a ton of horse, so you have to hold him at bay and don't kick. And you might just kick enough to hold them at bay and let the guy out behind you, and he'll do you like a dinner. So you have to be going forward, but still also having that little kick left in you to try and hold the control of the race. You know.
You talk of leading, you talk of rating your horse. What about weather conditions and track conditions? How important is that?
Oh, it's very important. You know, it's not easy driving in rainy, you know, really inclement weather and that. You know, the tracks are quagmire, one thing and another, and different horses respond good in the weather, on wet tracks, others don't, others are just dry weather runners, but yes, it's not easy driving in a field of about 14 and you're snowed back second last on a fence and the horse is pulling like mad and there's pouring rain, you can hardly see, and the horses getting interfered in front of you and outside and you're climbing into wheels. It's no fun out there sometimes, I tell you.
Well, a recent innovation, of course, we had standing starts, then we went to mobiles, and now we've got a strange creature called walk-up starts if the mobiles can't be used.
Yes, well, I've been lucky enough to win a few of them. That's when you really want to be alert what you're doing there, you know. When they say come up, I'm first up there, and if the others don't want to wait for me, well, that's their problem. They can always, it's a flag start. Sometimes horses don't respond good from walk-up starts because they don't see the mobile and they don't get that same sort of atmosphere to want to run, so you really want to smarten your horse up. That's one time you're probably a little smack in the tail and liven him up going up to a walk-up start, you know. You've got to show plenty of dash out of that.
Do you give them a different preliminary for a walk-up start?
Well, I reckon I might, yeah. Instead of going to when I go to the mobile, I like them to go to the gate nice and relaxed and just let the atmosphere of the race take control of them. But in a walk-up start, I want them charging up. I want them, the keener as I can get them, the better, you know. I'll whistle them up and maybe give them a little smack on the rump and take hold of them and get them right up in the bit. So when even if they're going up in line, I want my horse to charge out. But that's the way I do it anyway.
Is there an advantage drawn on the inside with a walk-up start?
Not necessarily so, no. The clerk of the course, he has to take you up, and you're supposed to follow the clerk of the course up to the dispatch point, and he's on the outside, so if you keep with the clerk of the course, I think that you might get ahead of the others, you know. There's no great advantage for a walk-up start drawn number one, because often they turn them around, and number one's last to turn, number 8 goes up first, and time you turn around, half the field's 10 lengths ahead of you. And most starters don't want to call off an event if they can help it, because it's going to be just as hard the next start.
Well, in that last desperate surge to the line, you see plenty of drivers drop their foot.
Well, I don't think that's a good policy. It's a sign that you're almost letting your horse know that you're desperate yourself. You all the time got to be driving a horse with confidence. The horse can tell whether you're confident, he can tell whether you're beat, the same as anyone else looking from the grandstand. I don't think it's good to drop your leg. I think that you've got to keep coaching your horse the best you can, do everything you can to keep a horse going, and most of all I think that you've got to give that horse that 1% confidence, even though you're driving him out with the whip. When you give him a hit, you want to give him his chance to respond from that little tap. You know, if you just hit him and keep hitting him, the horse, he's not a slave. You know, he'll do his best for you, but you can't overdrive him, you know.
You're a right-handed whip driver. You use the whip in your right hand. Yeah. Going to the line, you might give a horse 8 or 10 on the right-hand side of the rump. Do you ever switch sides and just give him one on the left to liven him up?
Yeah, I've been known to do that. I'm more like him on the left side first before I hit the right side, you know. Sometimes you might straighten up and they're coming at you. Rather just go for the whip, maybe just bring your whip over their rump, let them see it, and then go to that side and give them a tap that side on the left hand, let them know that you're starting to get a bit serious here, you know. And then you can always switch back to the side that you hit the hardest on. But I think give them every opportunity to respond to rein driving. Then when you change your tone of voice, they find out, well, geez, must be time to do something, you know. So when you straighten up, a lot of drivers roar at them, and I agree that's the best thing to do, rather than being straight away hitting them. Sometimes you need to growl at them for a start, grab hold of them, rather than just let the reins go loose, take a stronger firm of them, rouse at them a little bit, and then show them the whip, let them see it, And then if they respond to that, just keep showing it to them. If you feel like that's not doing enough, give your little whip a flick across and maybe hit the mud sheet to make a noise. And if they respond to that, keep doing that whilst they're responding. But if you feel that that's not responding enough, then you have to resort to giving them a hit. And sometimes it might be best to just tickle the whip through the tail first. And there's lots of things you can do. Sometimes I'm amazed that some drivers will straighten up on a front runner, and as soon as there's a bit of pressure on them, the first thing they do is pull the whip out and start hitting. And it amazes me because there's so many things you can do from the top of the lane to the winning post without having to hit a horse to get him to respond. And any horseman would probably know that you don't have to whip a horse to make him do his best. Kindness, encouragement, frighten him, but don't hit him too hard. We'll get a lot more out of a horse than a lot of drivers just start whipping him from, say, 2 furlong from home or furlong from home. And the new rule coming in now that you can only hit a horse a few times, I think it's a good rule. I think drivers will learn to drive better, horses respond better for them, and roar at them, frighten them, but don't give them a hiding.
Well, plenty of horses won't respond to it. Koala King, a case in point.
Yes, he must have, I don't know whether he's ever hit early in his career, I don't know, but some horses won't respond to hard whip driving. He's one that always done his best by just showing it to him. He always raced well for Brian Hancock. He held the whip high on him and he really run. I think when I drove him, I hardly even had to turn the whip round. He rushed through and won anyway. But no, he's similar to a lot of horses, and probably 9 out of 10 horses don't respond to the whip. I don't think I've driven many horses I can say the whip won me the race. I think I've lost more races with the whip than I've won with it. I think they've cost me races hitting horses too hard, and I learned a long time ago you don't want to be hurting them.
Well, grandstand drivers always see when you see a horse swishing his tail that he's gone. Is that always the case?
Not always the case, no. It's not a good sign, but it's not always the case. Some horses switch the tail. I haven't seen him in the flesh, but I've watched him on Sky Channel on the Inner Dominion, that Franco Ice. He's an outstanding horse, and he switched his tail the whole way, but he's certainly savage to judge, you know. And you get another horse switch the tail and they won't race, but most trainers, if they switch the tail once or twice in racing, they'll tie their tail and they don't give them a chance to do it again.
In standing starts, you often hear a lot of drivers saying they don't like to be drawn number 1. The horse can often look up at the starter and hesitate away. Do you prefer to be drawn in barrier 2?
No, I like number 1 from a standing start. It's very good because the barrier flicks across, hits the gate, hits the fence the other side, and it affects the horses out wide. From number 1, you can even afford to fumble and be a little bit slow out because the others not only got to beat you out, they've got to be a length ahead of you to cross you, and you can gather speed quick from number 1. If you've got a tardy beginner, you can stand him against the running rail, put his head over the fence. You can even get an attendant to hold your horse, pat him at the barrier. Lots of things. No, you won't. There's nothing wrong with number 1, and I know occasionally they might shy away from the starter, whatever. Pretty rare that happens.
Is there a secret to getting horses away from a stand?
No real secret, but you wouldn't want to be bustling them or anything like that. You should, in your prelim, you should stand the horse up once or twice to get a little feel of him. You don't want to be up to the barrier too early. You've got to go when the starter says come up, you come up, but you want to just be relaxed in the cart, don't have too tight a hold of his mouth. And I'd say always have one foot in the footrest and your other leg down, so you've got balance. When the horse jumps forward, you don't sort of fall back on his mouth. The first step the horse makes is you should step off himself, don't be on his mouth, lean forward, let him stride off, and then gradually pick him up if you need be. There's lots of things for standing start. That's not an easy thing to do to get a horse away. You know, you can, if a horse stands flat-footed, the first thing you go to do is pull his mouth, and that upsets him and he gallops. Some horses dwell that little bit, and you've got to wait for them. Even if the horses jump a half a length ahead of you, you have to have enough patience still to let him make the first move. Once a horse makes the first move, then you can ask him. But if he's standing flat-footed, and the barrier goes and you felt he's going to stand there, then you niggle him, you give him a fright and you make a jump and the chances are he'll gallop. So you have to have a lot of patience from the standing start. But once the horse makes his first move and the first step, you can flurry him out pretty quick then. I've often been last away in the first few strides but still led by many lengths. I think when I won the Hancock on True and Armo, he was bad away, but I drew the outside. Kevin Robertson thought, well, if you can get him away, you'll have a chance. And I was laid up to the barrier, stood him over the outside fence to the crowd, and the crowd was sort of patting him and talking, and the mind was off the race, and the barrier went. He didn't know, I just sort of just turned him like that, he stepped, and away he went. But you must not make the first move, you know, you let the horse do that.
Well, Brian, it's a far different preliminary for a standing start than a mobile.
Yes, it is. A lot different. You know, you'd want to just keep on the right side of a horse in the standing start. You know, if you get having a little wrestle with him somewhere along the line, you'll find that when he gets to the barrier, he's agitated, backing out and fiddling and pretty hard to get away. So you certainly want to be on the right side of a horse. I generally try and make friends with them straight away. As soon as I go to him to drive, I'll give him a little pat in the face or a rump and talk to him and just go out in the plim casual as I like, you know, and I like to just stride around, pull up over the back somewhere where it's peaceful, stand the horse at the outside fence or the inside fence, probably the outside because I've got run over a few times standing on the inside, but like to just stand quietly with them and just let them move off. Only half the pace they'll go away under race conditions, so they feel like they're under no pressure. And then if I get a chance, I'll even do it again and just let them walk off casually as you like. And then when they go to the barrier, I hope that they have the same feeling that there's not going to be under any pressure for them, and they'll stand relaxed and the barrier goes and make the first step. And then if I ask them to go most of the time, they'll live themselves up and go.
In mobile racing, when you draw the second line, what sort of horse do you like to follow out?
Oh, naturally you like to follow out a safe horse that doesn't stand on his head or make a break. Secondly, you like to follow out one with speed. And thirdly, you like to follow out a horse that's got a driver that's very aggressive, that he'll not only come out quick, keep going and take you into a forward position.
What about track size? The different driving styles on smaller tracks, on 3.5 furlong tracks or on 5/8 tracks such as Albion Park?
Oh, well, there's a big difference, you know. I think you'll find on a 3.5 furlong track, you've got to be a very aggressive driver. You've got to be in the first 3 or 4. You're not really going to be in the race. Differently if you've got one that's 3's on and he's 2 or 3 seconds better than the field. If you're driving a horse that's even with the ability of the others, you've got to have your horse in a reasonable position throughout if you've got any chance to win. And you want to be in the first 3 or 4 on a small track. If you're driving at Albion Park, well, it's different, you know. I think that I've driven there not as much as I'd like, but what I've seen and what I've driven there, it's a type of track that if you can come from anywhere to win. You could be last into the straight and stride down the outside and pick him up, and you can drive a horse to his ability on that track. If he's a sit-sprint horse, you can drive him that way. If he's a strong sort of a customer where you can make use of him in the straights without going on the bends, get yourself up outside the leader or up near him. And it's a lot easier and a lot nicer way to drive on Albion Park than it is on a lot of other tracks down here in Victoria.
You've had great success at Harold Park.
I love Harold Park. It's not a big track. It's got a lot of atmosphere. Horses race well there. But once again, well, I learnt to drive at Harold Park because I started my career off in the Melbourne Showgrounds, and it's a similar circumstances. Short straights, narrow turns, and you've got to drive fairly aggressive to be near the lead there, and you don't want to be too far back at Harold Park, especially on the home turn.
On the turn, Levenhelm put his head in front of Like Magic, and Gull Stakes gets to third. Jedi Master further out with Sam Isaacs from well back. In the straight, though, Levenhelm dashes to the lead from Gull Stakes. Jedi Master and Sam Isaacs is flashing home wide out, but Levenhelm is clear. He's got them beaten, the favourite. Sam Isaacs comes from last to get second.
What's the difference between driving a trotter and a pacer?
Oh, there's a big difference, you know. Well, I often used to say, or I've heard Gavin Lang say to Andrew Peace, you're not a trotting driver unless you've won on a trotter. And He's had a couple of tips. I don't know whether he has one on a trot. I think he got beat on True Roman, but there is a big difference between a trotter and a pacer. A trotter's like riding a bike. You've got to be balanced all the way. You've got to feel him and balance him and help him on the corners and help him sometime in the straight. And if you're going to make a run, you can only poke through, you can't rush through. Then you might have to want to sprint up, but you can only govern his sprint because you go too fast, he'll break. You've got to get him away from the stand and help him and that. Where a pacer, most of them are foolproof. You hunt them this or hunt them that and they'll stay in their gear and go. But when you're driving a trotter, by geez, you know, you really know you're out in a horse race, you know.
Is there a difference driving colts than driving fillies or mares? Or geldings for that matter?
Only if you look under their tail. No, there's not much difference, you know. I rather like driving fillies. I think they're great triers, fillies. Colts, they're good to drive, but they're pretty cunning. Geldings, they seem to race more relaxed, more peaceful horses to drive. Colts can be a bit of a handful at times, you know. Hard to know sometimes driving a colt whether you should rouse on him or stand over him or try and go with him. Most of the time I feel you want to go with a colt. Let him do whatever he wants to do in moderation, if you can. If a stallion feels like he wants to run at the half, well, maybe he's telling you that he can do it. Let him do it. Well, there's probably a couple of ways to get into a race sulky. I found there's probably 1,000 ways to get out of them, getting tipped out and one thing and another, but I always found the best way to get in the sulky for mine was to slide on like that and put your hand on the shaft here so you've got control of your balance. If a horse jumps forward or back, he won't just tip you back over and then just swing your legs over like that. A lot of drivers then immediately drop the reins down and put them under your seat like that, and it's nice and comfortable too. But I'm inclined to keep my reins out. I like to keep them in my hand all the time. I don't know if one way is better than the other, but it suits me to have them like this. Well, there's lots of things you can do with your reins and your whip when you're driving in a race. You don't necessarily have to start whipping your horse severely. From the top of the lane, you can, it's what you've got hands for, is to make horses go, and sometimes rather than just let your reins go loose and just the horse loses sort of confidence in you, sometimes if you took hold of him and sat back against him and just sort of held him a little bit, he might just suddenly think he's not going that bad himself. He might fire on a little bit more, but when the pressure comes, it's natural that you have to do something. So what do? You know, sometimes you can just run your hand over their rump with your rein. If that doesn't respond enough, well, naturally you want to produce your whip. And sometimes that's enough with a horse. Just let him see it, you know. You just sort of lean to the side a bit and flick it up, and sometimes the horse will surge a little bit, but that may not last that long. And if that doesn't work, well, you can always just give you a shaft, a flick like that, and the noise, the sensation of the noise, you'll feel the horse respond a little bit. If you feel that he's responding, well, that's enough. You can't ask any more than a horse than to respond to your action. So if you give the shaft a flick and you feel him trying, you keep on doing it. You keep on doing it. And if you feel he's not, try the other shaft. Then there's always his tail to flap. You can always run your whip through his tail. And then by that time, you must be getting close to the line. If you feel then that maybe you may have to change your reins into one hand and give him a smack. And you can often just flick from one side to the other, but there's so many things you can do, and that's a few of them. You don't have to just suddenly start bashing a horse from the top of the lane. I feel he'll only go 10 feet and he'll sour up on you. So just remember, there's shafts to hit, there's mud sheets to hit, and if there's no horse around you, you can even give the wheels a bit of a flick, but probably it's not a good policy to do because there's other horses around you. But if you get an opportunity, if you're outside a horse and there's nothing outside you, a little hit on the disc like that, you get a great response from a horse, you know. So I think that if drivers just mainly look for the shafts, look for the mud sheet, maybe go to the disc, tickle their tail, you're going to get a better response. In standing start races, I generally like to sit as relaxed as I can in a sulky, like you're sitting in an armchair if you can. So the horse has a feeling that there's no great excitement going to happen and keep him in a relaxed state. And it's very essential at the barrier before dispatch that you have one leg down so you've got nice balance in the cart, so if the horse jumps forward, I don't lose my balance. But if the horse jumps forward and I've got my feet up, I fall back on his mouth. And when you fall back on their mouth, well, straight away puts them off stride, throw their head up in the air, and they can miss the kick by many, many lengths. So I always suggest, and I guess that most drivers do anyway, always have one leg down. It doesn't matter which leg, but as long as you've got balance, when the barrier goes, you can go forward with the horse. It's most essential that you don't touch your horse's mouth when the barrier goes. Let him make the first step. If the barrier goes and he stands flat-footed, it's not a good policy to hunt him off the mark. You might agitate him, so let him dwell that little half second. He'll soon catch up and you won't interfere with his mouth, and most times you'll weigh safely. Driving a horse out of the mobile, I feel that that you don't want a too short a grip of a horse coming out of the gate. Maybe I drive when my reign's a bit longer than most drivers, but it suits me, and I feel it would suit a lot of other drivers. I notice a lot of drivers drive out of the gate and they've got a fairly short hold of their horse. When the gate comes open, they sort of have to lean forward to get the horse to respond. I feel if you drive on a fairly long length hobble, you can lean back a little bit and you only have to just drop your hands a little bit. The horse will seem to race out of the gate a lot quicker with a nice long length of rein. If you've got too short a hold of him, he seems to be restricted in his neck and he won't find his top speed as quick. So it's nice for a horse to take you out of the gate. If you can be leaning back out of the gate and have him rev out and take you, rather than if you're in a real tight hold, you've got to lean forward and go and make him go out. I found that it's better to have a horse take you out of the gate rather than you take him out of the gate. So especially if you want a horse to accelerate fast, I feel that don't drive him on too tight a rein. In case of you've got hobble shortness on a horse, well, naturally you've got to get away, then you pull them out, so it's no real big deal. You have your leg down, the barrier goes, you just rock away and you feel like he's nice and safe. You put your leg up and you make sure you don't run into anybody. When you've got enough time, you lean down and don't make any sudden grabs, just gradually take a nice firm hold of him and just gradually pull him out, drop them down, put your hand back on the rein. It's no big deal, anyone should be able to do that without any trouble, but main thing, I always like to get them out real early. A lot of them get them away and maybe go around the first turn. It might suit some horses, but I think the essential is the first two strides. If he's pacing, get them out and they can explode to their top speed in their own racing length. So I like to get them out as soon. There really should only be essential to get a horse away. You shouldn't need them for very long.
Well, you're taught by a master, your father, George Gath. You've had a long family involvement in the industry. Now your son Matthew is following in as a driver and eventually as a trainer. What advice do you give him?
I'm giving the advice all day long. He doesn't always take it. Dedication's the main thing. You have to love the sport, be dedicated, prepared to work hard under any conditions. Don't expect to get a lot of money out of it early in the game. Prepared to learn, to listen to old people, watch a lot. Don't be afraid to talk to the top drivers. They all want to help the kids and they all want the sport to go. And I think if you work hard, talk to the right people and listen and try and adapt to what they say, I'm sure that most of the lads, given the opportunity, can make it.
Got to look your best, eh, George?
Yeah, that's right. I've never looked very good at any time, but I've had a wonderful life, don't worry. I've met some wonderful people and, you know, I've been everywhere, around the world once and a half.
Well, George, you drove for about 50 years. You've obviously seen a lot of changes in driving styles over those years.
Oh, yes, I'm sure I did. I've seen some very good ones and a lot of bad ones, and some look pretty good for a couple of years, and next thing they can never win a race, or they do something wrong, or get suspended, and Christ knows what. But I mean, I've seen a lot of them went right through their life, and they had to go out of it, and I kept on going. And I kept going. I think I've told some of you, or I'm buggered if I know, but I was into my 70s, 73 or 4, I think, when I was still driving.
What about the mobile starts now? Do you think they're better than the standing start days?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't have suited me so well, because I used to beat those out that wasn't so good. No, I don't know, but I think I did a little bit, but when it started, when they put the mobile in and that and others that wasn't so good looked better, you understand? So I suppose it was better for them, really.
Well, you were a champion at getting horses away from a standing start. What was the trick to it? Was there a trick to getting them away from a stand?
Oh, I wouldn't say there was a trick to it, but I'd started off as a horseman, driving draft horses on the farm and rounding up the cattle and doing jobs, you know, and I suppose I'd done a lot of things that the younger trotters and trainers got the game. They jumped straight into it when they was about over 20 or 30, and I think I had a bit of a start on them.
But your boy Brian, he grew up a horseman. He's done a good job.
Yes, he's turned up, but he didn't get as good as me. Oh, no.
And what about Matthew?
He's going to be a champion.
Why do you say that?
Oh, I've seen him handling young'uns, and I see the horses sort of like him too. When he's yoking them up, he's petting them and he's putting the harness on them, and, you know, you can tell the difference. I'll bet the bloody horses would know straight away that he's all right. Others would be giving him some horse a whack and hunching him away, and, well, naturally, the horses know too, you know.
You got to be kind to him, George?
Oh, I think so. Oh, you can give them a bit of a whack once in a while, but some of them are doing it all the time. They're fighting their horses.
You've always loved the square trotters, haven't you?
Yes, but I've had a million bloody paces.
Did you have a preference for the trotters?
Well, I think I did slightly, yes. Somehow I seem to get me trotters going better than some of the others.
Do you think it was with the shoeing?
Oh, yes. Yes, they're good to shoe, and they didn't want a lot of weight on them either, the shoes, you know. Well, I've seen some of them with heavy shoes and about a 5-ounce toe weight as well. And they could win too. That's a lot of weight, isn't it?
It takes a lot more patience, I guess, too, to train a trotter than a pacer.
I think it would. Oh, yes. Providing then some of them be wanting to giving them too much sometimes. They'd be wanting to putting too much on them. But you can work a trotter now 3 times of a day. But I never used to do that, but I know Brian does.
They're a durable breed, aren't they? You must love them. You love them as an animal, the standardbred, eh, George?
Oh, I think so, yes.
And you got no regrets about your lifetime in this game?
No, really, not really. I might have done something better some other way. I don't know what I would have. I don't think I could have. I mightn't have. No, I got married once and she does most of the work.
And what's the thing you like most about the trotting game?
Well, I like the trotting people very good. All the trotting fellows I met seem better than the galloping fellows. I might have been wrong. I suppose you could have your few, but you couldn't get them to know the lot, you understand?
You must be very proud of the way the boys have gone on, Neville and Brian and now Matthew and Philip and Andrew.
That's right, the whole lot of them. I'm sure that they have their good years or their good months, you know, things go good and then they go bad. I suppose in your game it's not always exactly as good as it ought to be. Would it?
And you're still pretty keen, you follow the form and listen to the races and go to the trials now and again?
Yes, I do, but if they were in the last 2 or 3 races at a country meeting about 30 mile away or something like that, I said, oh, I'm not going to go, it's no bloody good go. I might wait and hear the first 4 races, understand? And I'll come home,
And you still enjoy it as much now as you did 50 years ago?
Get in there, 'cause me boys are winning races. I don't bet much, but I do have a little bit.
Are you a good judge?
Yes, sometimes I'm better judge. I know what some that...
Who's the best judge, you or Brian?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose Brian might be better for nowadays at it, but I think I was better than him at the start.